Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Friends, myself, Principal Dr. Bhaskar Shukla from Yuvraj Subhag Singh Ji, Arts and Commerce College, Devgarh Balia. My today's topic is literary terms. A brief introduction, a little bit about me. I have published some books on literature. This is my book on feminism. As we know that feminism is a very debatable topic, and many books have been written on this. Now this is my second book on feminism. It is on French feminists and the second sex. We know that feminism became very popular in France, and Simone de Beauvoir is the main pioneer in feminism. And one more book on feminism. This is Feminism and Female Writers. So a brief note about me. Now let us begin our topic, literary terms. In accordance with criticism, when we think about literary terms in accordance with criticism, let us first take the term criticism. What is criticism? As we know that an author is writing a book, an author is writing a novel, a short story, a short poem, a long poem, an epic, or whatever he writes, it is criticized by some other writer. So, writer is a one man and critic is another man. Now, the criteria of writing at the time of writing is different. And a critic, it is criticizing the work. So, his criteria is different. So, a lot of compromises, lot of debate is there between the original work and criticism. Still, the debate is going on whether the original work has been maintained its decorum while criticism or not. But criticism is there after the writing. So, criticism is done by writers or a critic. Critic has not his original personality. A writer is a critic. A writer may criticize his own work. A writer may criticize another writer's work. Like Shakespeare's drama have been criticized by Ben Jonson, Dryden, and many other writers in the 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. So, criticism is not a difficult task. Writing is a difficult task. Criticism is not that easy also. To criticize someone's work is easy, but to maintain the originality of the work is not that easy. So this is criticism. When a critic criticizing a work, he has to go through the work. He has to go through the environment in which the writer has written the work. He has to study the writer. He has to study his other works. He has to study his social background, his political background, his literary background. Then he can judge his work. then he can write something about that work. So, this is criticism. Now, when we think about a critic, who is a critic? What is the characteristics of a good critic? When we think about critic may be called a second writer, a judge. He has to give judgment on someone's work. So, critic is a second writer of that work. One work has been written by a writer. Now, when a critic is criticizing that work, he is actually rewriting. He is rewriting the work in his own way. So, critic rewrites the work. Critic observes the work. Critic maintains the originality of the work. So, a critic should be a good observer, should be a good judge, should be a good reader, should be a good writer, because he has to give judgment on someone's work. So, he has a big work, big duty, major duty, because the writer has finished his work. Now, two contexts are there. The writer is there, the reader is there. Now, who links the writer and the reader? It is the critic who links the writer and the reader. Sometimes, friends, what happens? We don't read original work. We merely read criticism. Like we would like to study T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. So, some students or even some teachers, they don't read original work. They just go through the criticism on the Wasteland. So, in that way, critic and criticism are useful for reader also. So, two things we have started. What is critic? What is critic's work? And what is criticism? So, with this introduction, we should go ahead with our literary terms. Now, one important term I am going to discuss, that is tragedy. Tragedy, when we think about tragedy, we think about Greek tragedy. Greek tragedy, as we know, Euripides, Sophocles, Aristotle, they are the great Greek writers. And with the introduction of Aristotle on tragedy, we should begin our term tragedy. What he has said, that tragedy is an imitation of an action. You know, when we see a play, two things are there. It is either it is comedy or it is tragedy. When we see tragedy, what we feel, and when we see comedy, what we feel. So Aristotle goes ahead with the definition of tragedy. Tragedy is an imitation of an action. Now, the Greek tragedy has three things: unity of time, unity of place, and unity of action. Greek tragedy has a single subject, single action, limited time, and a single place or limited place. They observe in unities. So Aristotle gave the definition of tragedy. It is an imitation of an action. Now, when we see tragedy, now Aristotle focus on two very important things. What we feel when we see a tragedy. He says we feel pity and fear. These are very important words. Pity and fear. When someone is assassinated, when someone is murdered, we feel pity for him. We feel fear for him also. Or rather, we feel fear for ourselves also. Two emotions are going together, pity and fear. We feel pity for that. Let us take example of any Shakespearean tragedy, Julius Caesar or Othello. When we see Othello, the last scene of Othello, when we see that Othello is commits suicide or he is dead, so we feel pity for Othello. And we feel fear also. Oh, what is going on? Murder, assassination, very tragic scene is going on. So, two emotions Aristotle focuses on, pity and fear. Now, in the end, what happens? Purgation, he used the name purgation or catharsis. What is catharsis? And what is purgation? Catharsis means emotional cleansing, emotional relaxation, emotional relief we feel. So, the audience, the spectator, going in two phases. When he sees a tragedy, first he feels pity and fear, and then when the play is going to end, he feels emotional cleansing or catharsis. His all emotions are now finished, or all the emotional aspects are now almost over. He feels relaxed. He gets relief when the play ends. So this is the Aristotelian criteria of tragedy, Greek tragedy. Now, Greek tragedy and Aristotle's criteria can be applied to any tragedy or to any other tragedy written by any writer. When we divide tragedy into two departments, one is Greek tragedy and the other is Shakespearean tragedy. Because Shakespeare is perhaps the greatest tragic writers, the greatest tragedy writer, one of the greatest tragedy writers. Even 400 years, he died in nearly 1600. Now 400 years has been completed. Still, his popularity is immense. What is particular, what is peculiar, or what is completeness about Shakespeare? What is special about Shakespeare? When we think about Shakespearean tragedy, King Lear, Hamlet, Othello, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth. So all major his tragedies have great impact on the audience. Even the researchers till today they are assessing his work, his tragedies. When we think about Othello on the criteria of pity and fear, we feel pity for Othello when he assassinates Desdemona by the pillow. Friends, it is very tragic scene when beautiful Desdemona assassinated or murdered by Othello. But in the end, we see that when he realizes the truth, we feel pity for Othello that he, in a very misguided way, he murdered his beautiful wife. So he feels shocked and he commits suicide. So the tragic end. Now, one more thing when we think about tragedy, that Aristotle gave the idea of tragic flaw in the character. Tragic flaw in the character, or some problems in the thinking of the character, thinking of the person who becomes victim of tragedy, some fault in the character. If we take Hamlet, what is Hamlet's fault? What is the tragic flaw of Hamlet? Can you tell me? Hamlet's tragic flaw is his indecisiveness.